Mr. Speaker, tēnā tātou katoa.
Jami-Lee Ross.
Mr. Speaker, I think we've just heard from the tail that will be wagging the next Labor government dog. The tail that will be wagging the next Labor government dog. If a miracle is pulled off at the end of the year, if a miracle that's pulled off at the end of the year takes place and Labor's in government, we just heard from the tail that will be wagging the dog. And it's going to be a very, very sick dog. A very sick dog, because from what we know from the last Labor government, we're in trouble as New Zealanders. Let me remind you how sick the last Labor government dog was. We had a decade of deficits left for this government when we came into government. A decade of deficits left for us. Power prices increased by 72% in the last 9 years. We were left with an ETS that would have doubled the cost to households to about $330 extra a year. Floating mortgage rates peaked at 11% in 2008. I remember those mortgage rates. That's when I bought my first house, and we took one of those high mortgage rates that the last Labor government left us with. Official cash rate peaked at 8.25%, and food prices were up 21%. Mr. Speaker, that was a worrying time for New Zealanders. And unfortunately, for the other side, across there, they've got no hope of getting across the line because New Zealanders just don't believe they're going to get far. New Zealanders don't believe they're going to get far because right over there we have the Labor campaign manager. Let me remind you, Mr. Speaker, what the Labor campaign manager spent the last week doing. He spent the last week filibustering in this House, trying to fight voluntary student membership. An appalling display. Point of order after point of order. And then we had Phil Goff. They spent the last week trying to work out how to remember whether Phil Goff had a meeting with the SIS. And the third thing they spent the last week doing, and you'll love this, Mr. Williamson, the third thing that the Labor campaign manager spent the last week doing.
Point of order, the Honourable Chairman.
Mr. Speaker, that is a grievous insult to you, sir, to suggest that you are Mr. Williamson. I'm sure you're offended. We're offended on your behalf.
Order. I'm very grateful for members' concern, but we shouldn't interrupt another member's speech. Jami-Lee Ross.
I know that the member Trevor Mallard was enjoying this so much because the third thing I'm going to mention that the Labor campaign manager has been doing in the last week is cycling around Pakuranga. No. The big thing that's in the Labor Party campaign strategy is a cycle race in Pakuranga. That's what Trevor Mallard's been doing. We saw him on Saturday cycling around Pakuranga. That's what they're focused on. The Labor Party campaign plan, the Labor campaign plan gets even better. It gets better. It's got 3 points to it. More tax, more debt, higher spending. If they get in as the next government, if a miracle's pulled off at the end of the year, we've got to look forward to more tax, more spending and more debt, with a tail on Hone Harawira wagging their dog. Mr. Speaker, I feel sorry for the Labor candidate in Botany because we've got a good story to tell and I'm looking forward to telling it. I'm looking forward to telling the people of Botany that we've spent $2.5 million upgrading and modernising 8 schools in Botany. We've got 300 police officers on the streets of counties Manukau, which is helping to lower crime in my electorate. Crime has dropped by 9.5%, and 9.5% since this government's been in place, because we've put more police onto the streets of counties Manukau. All Labor wants to do is cycle around the streets of Pakuranga, and we're putting more police onto the streets of Botany. Mr. Speaker, I'm also looking forward to telling the people of Botany about the more than 300 extra elective surgeries through the county's Manukau District Health Board. Excellent. I'll be looking forward to telling them about the extra funding for early childhood education. $1.4 billion. $1.4 billion, the highest that's ever been spent on early childhood education. And I'll be talking to them about the 87% of 2-year-olds in counties Manukau that are now fully immunised, with dedicated staff working towards getting that up to 90%. Mr. Speaker, those are the good news stories that we can tell. Those are the good news stories that national candidates around the country will be telling the voters and their electorates. All the Labor Party's got to talk about is more tax, more spending and higher debt, and it'll be a worry. Mr Speaker, I'm pleased to have spoken in my first general debate. Looking forward to the cycle race, Trevor, and let's look forward to the next Hone Labour government.
Order. The time for this debate has expired. I understand it is the government's intention to introduce an impressed supply bill.
Apply second for 2011-12 bill.